Hello and welcome back to Assetto Corsa EVO. Thank you very much for joining me in today's video. Now in the last video I started taking a look at some of the updates that 0.6 has brought to the sim, or version 0.6 has brought to the sim. Notably a GT3 car, the Ferrari 296 GT3, Sebring, which is an excellent circuit, really well done, but also a lot of the physics changes that have happened, suspension, tyres, brakes. There were some audio changes as well, which are quite positive, but a lot of the physics changes, which I think are a great step in the right direction. Now, with version 0.6, there were two classic cars that were brought into the sim. The Ferrari 288 GTO and the Lamborghini Countach. In this video, I'm going to be driving both of these vehicles at the Nürburgring Nordschleife, because that seems to be the best place to really test them, and I'm going to be seeing how the physics are in these sorts of vehicles, and also talking a little bit more about what I think Assetto Corsa EVO needs to do in version 0.7. One thing that is probably painfully obvious here is post-processing, anti-aliasing, that sort of thing. So make sure you stay tuned. Let's get started. Let's take a Ferrari GTO on the road. I have done about a mile and a half in both vehicles just to make sure that they do work and the controls work properly, but we shall see how this all pans out. So, here we are in the 288 GTO. That start sounds a bit strange. It sounds like it has some sort of start sequence sound that just dies off really oddly. I'm not sure what the best way of describing that is. Let's have a go with this. So, clutch physics are still a bit broken, really. I think that is a combination of biting point issues and maybe just the clutch physics themselves not quite being right. But what I'm going to do is probably... should I do a push lap? And I'm just trying to think what timing this would be. So each one of these would be 8 minutes. That would be 16 minutes plus a replay. Yes, I think that is what I'm going to do. So I'll do one more relaxed lap, this one, an out lap, then I'll go back in, do a push lap, then we can have a look at the replay of the push lap, followed by doing the same for the Lamborghini, the Countach. Now, I'm not going to be going through this like I do with vehicles in the Nordschleife challenge. Do stay tuned, I have some plans for an Assetto Corsa EVO Nordschleife challenge. But this is more so first impressions of how this car feels to drive and sounds. Now I will say, oddly enough, when I got the car moving, it felt fairly light, and now that I am moving, it suddenly feels heavier, which I'm not sure is correct. I think, at least in reality, the steering wheel feels lighter at speed than it does at low speed. So at high speed it feels lighter. Now I'm not sure if that is a Fanatec issue or if that is an Assetto Corsa bug. Going to have to find out. Let's open the taps a little, shall we? It's not too bad. Disappointment in a couple of things. First off, just taking a look at it, the odometer is, well, fixed. It is not, it's just a texture, and that is really disappointing, because that was over 5 gears. That was an opportunity to really have a working odometer in this vehicle. Now maybe that will come a little later, but I think having an odometer that works would be really good. Assetto Corsa does it with some mods, of course, but Assetto Corsa does it. So Assetto Corsa EVO really should be doing it. Pop-in still is an issue around the Nordschleife, which in the last video when I did a lap around this towards the end of the video, I said the same thing, that there were issues, but that can be hopefully fixed and optimized in the next version. In fact, I think it needs to be. They need to look at the visual aspect of this, optimizations, pop-in level of detail models, anti-aliasing, post-processing, and the skybox, which looks a bit, well, blurry, really. It does take you out of, it really does take you out of the sim. Makes it feel far less real when you see things like that. Now, with this car, with this vehicle itself, it is interesting. So this one is a twin-turbo V8. Twin-turbo? I think so. I'm fairly sure this is a twin-turbo V8. Definitely a turbocharged V8. And it has, well, it feels quite nimble. It feels fairly light. Certainly feels fairly lightweight. And it feels a little, what is the right term, right way to describe this? It feels a little sketchy, a little on edge. And I think a lot of the vehicles now in the Assetto Corsa EVO version 0.6, I've done a little bit more testing and driven quite a few more vehicles. A lot more of them sound or feel like they are more on edge. Easier to slide out, I say easier to slide out, but simultaneously it is easier to understand what they are doing, and therefore it is easier to drive it within limits, which is what I'm doing here. Now, that is not to say I'm not going to have a catastrophic accident at some point. That is highly likely. It is just a matter of that would be my own doing, as opposed to just not being able to feel things. Now, in terms of sound, this car sounds really quite good. Apart from that startup sound, which sounds a bit odd, the car in general sounds really good, and with the full force audio effects in full effect on my steering wheel, it actually translates through my entire rig. So I can feel this and the vibration of the car engine. Not all of it, of course, but I can feel this in my feet, and this as well, these bumps, I can actually feel that not just in my wheel because of the wheelbase, but in my feet. And that is a level of immersion, just another level of immersion. If I could now feel this somehow, transducers would do this probably, but if I could feel this somehow in my back, under my seat, and well, in my arms I am already feeling it. So yes, it would be under my seat and in my back. If I could feel these sorts of things, these bumps and these little skips and hops and engine notes, that would make it incredibly immersive. So plenty of steps in the right direction here for for Kuno, so they are doing a fairly good job there. I'm still a bit curious as to why this feels so heavy at the higher speeds when it really should be feeling fairly light. So that is something for me to look at and try and figure out. Coming up to the end of the first lap fairly soon, not much to go, and I am getting a little bit more used to the vehicle. This is the longest I've driven it, and of course the Nordschleife being the vehicle, being the track where it has everything. Long corners, short corners, hairpins, off camber corners, on camber corners, medium speed corners, long straights, short straights. It has the lot. It is a very good place to test cars out. Bumpy sections, smooth sections. Here comes a very bumpy section. So it is really, really useful to test a car out here. There we are. So when you are off throttle and going around a corner, you do start feeling a little bit of the back trying to rotate on you in this vehicle. It's 8:36 and I'm just going to push a little bit and now slow this vehicle down. It's a gentle slow down. And just go straight through and straight out again. And this time I am going to put some... See, that's what I mean about the weird stalling. That is really, really strange. And a few cars are doing this, actually. Right, I am now going to actually push on this lap. So here we go for a push lap, 8 minutes 36 to beat. This is not going to be a 100% push lap. I'll point that out. But it is going to be some sort of a push lap just to get a feel for what this car is like not at the limit, but as you start approaching that limit. I want to see how alive this car feels. It is a 1980s Ferrari. It should technically be a death trap. Or I say technically, it should figuratively be a... no, actually, it should literally be a death trap. I think some of these were literally death traps. So gear shifts, maybe I'm taking them a little bit too aggressively. The car feels like it is on edge, as if it wants to rotate. No ABS, so you have the lockups as you've just heard from me there. You have to be careful of those. Car appears to be fairly easy to lock up if you do not brake in a straight line. It has very little in the way of... It seems like it has very little in the way of grip on the tyres, so that is something to be wary of. Coming up Flugplatz, this time I am going to hit the brakes because I know I'm going much faster around this and I'm not sure exactly how much this vehicle can take. Flat through all of this. Up to 5th gear, and on the brakes, down to 4th. So the downshift, if you heel and toe, you can downshift pretty decently. Going up the gears, you do need to just wait a little for the gear to slot in like that, as opposed to jumping through it. that seems to work a little bit nicer. It's just maybe a second of hesitation as you go through the gears, ensuring that you do have the revs die down properly and do not get a jump. Same thing for downshifting, but of course if you are using heel and toe techniques, you are in a much better position on the downshift, so you do not have to worry quite as much. And as I've said, I'm not going flat out here. That is going to be for a completely different set of videos. This is more like 80%. Yes, I would say this is more like 80% of say speed, concentration. So there are sections where I will take it far easier than I normally would. For example, that being one. This section, miss hit miss, I've always been bad at. I've done hundreds of laps and there are so many cars I just cannot get correctly going through there. But I will say that with version 0.6, I am able to feel the movement of the cars a lot better, and that is, I mentioned this in the last video as well, it is an extremely positive experience. The car seems to be crashing into the ground a little, which is interesting. I can hear the occasional crashing into the ground. And there's so much crackle and backfire all the time. Even changing gear, it just pops and burbles. It really is a 1980s supercar. Now I'm expecting, so this one was, oh, that lift-off sound was nice. So this car is lighter, it is fairly, I'd say this is fairly nimble, fairly bare bones in a sense, in how it appears to drive. It's just point and shoot, really, in its driving characteristics. Well, I say point and shoot, and also try very hard not to get it to be squirrely, which you'll notice that I am avoiding the back of it doing any weird squirreling, and that is part of me not pushing it quite as much. Had I pushed it up more, it would be under braking, it would be a lot more squirrely. But I'm expecting, and I say expecting, I know what these cars drive like, so that is why I'm expecting it. I'm expecting the Countach to drive extremely differently to what this is currently driving like. I'm expecting it to be... Actually, I'm expecting it to be a bit faster, at least in a straight line, than this GTO. It will sound different. I'm expecting it to be smoother on acceleration, so I'm definitely expecting a much smoother acceleration feeling and sensation from it. This is of course turbocharged, that is naturally aspirated, so completely different style. This is also a V8, that is a V12, so it should sound very, very different. And yes, but I'm also expecting, because this is a big boaty Lamborghini, I did not heel and toe there, I'm lucky that did not spit me out. Because this is a big boaty Lamborghini, I'm expecting it to have the turning circle of perhaps an articulated lot. No, they have pretty good turning circles. I almost put it back down into second. They have pretty good turning circles now. Perhaps the turning circle of maybe a yacht. They were the flagship. They were the flagship of Lamborghini, and I think they probably have the turning circle of some sort of ship. So maybe a luxury yacht or something. Definitely not going to have a good turning circle. I'm expecting it to be quite difficult to handle. But we are coming up to the end of this lap, and as you can see, I am 25 seconds up on my previous time, so I was not really going that slowly through over the previous lap, but 25 seconds is quite a lot. There we go, 8 minutes 9. And honestly, this car just keeps pulling, so we are going to slow down and pull into the pits, and thereafter have a quick look at the replay and see what we get from there. Now I have no idea where to reverse this, so I'm just going to stop it right here. Right, let's have a look at the replay and see what this looks like. Immediately going to save it, because that's probably a good idea. I guess if we take a look at it on the fastest one, oh, we have the pop-up headlamps up and running. Maybe I shouldn't have had them. It kind of looks better without the pop-up headlamps, in all honesty. Let's get a good listen, shall we? Then we'll go back, take a picture, and work from there. Interesting, the flame appeared to come out from underneath the car. I saw that. All the burbling and popping. I must say, this sounds very good, and they have been doing audio work, so that does sound pretty good. The exhausts look odd to me. I'm not sure what it is, but something about the exhausts look odd. Headlamps, or tail lamps, as it were, the brake lights. As we hit them, okay, they come on and off like the LED lights. That is something else perhaps they need to look into. These are minor things that I am finding and seeing and pointing out, because, well, these things just break that little bit of immersion, for me at least. They should not be switching on and off like that, but at the same time, that is not important. So that is definitely quite a big but there, that it is not important to do that at this point in time. That can come later. That can definitely come later. But the pop-in and all of that probably does need to be addressed. This vehicle is fairly good. I can hear that whistle. Those exhausts, there's something about those exhausts. They look as if they are baffled or something. Oh, there's some fire coming out of it. Blue flames. Just a little bit, but we do have blue flames. The blending between, I should have gone further out, but again, I wasn't really pushing it. The blending between the different sounds, the different notes and on throttle, off throttle, different rev ranges is done really, really well. Of all of the bits, I think it is the startup sound that sounds the weirdest. The rest of this sounds very good. although those pops and burbles maybe sound a little bit more generic, that being said, this is a pop and burble. My car does this, and it isn't going to sound entirely unique to my car. There will be other cars that do that. That is probably going to sound very much like an F40. This is going to be very, very similar. I'm not going to watch the entire replay, that's a fairly good amount, but I want to hear it from exterior, from the front, so we get a bit of a sound from there. So still hear all the burbling. Some of that intake noise is coming in from here. From the side you might be able to hear a little bit more as it goes in through there. No? And then at the back. So as he gets fully on throttle there, you hear the difference with the tone, which is quite interesting. It's all the flames. I'm not sure what I saw then. I saw something underneath that was a little bit orange. Speaking of orange, there's this colour, Rosso Dino, an orangey red colour. Instead of Rosso Scuderia or Rosso Corsa, I thought I'd paint it in this colour, and it does look excellent. This is a glossy colour, so no metallic flake, and I think that it really suits this car very, very well. I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and find some sort of, there we go. I was going to say, let me find some sort of area in which I can get a decent... Now this, anywhere here could be quite decent. Not there. This could be alright. Ooh, actually, that is where I want it. There we go. Let me see if I can get a reasonable shot right here. So, if I get rid of this, then I go to F7 for the camera. I can then move around. I can slow it right down with the movement. There we are. And what I could do is, I think I can go F2, zoom in with this, press F7, and get... Oh no, it does not give me that zoom. I'm still trying to determine how to get a better zoom. This is not actually... This is not an angle that I want. Oh well, I'll go back and let's go find somewhere else for us to find... maybe it needs to be on the opposite side. I think I need it on the opposite side. In fact, there we go. That will do. Unfortunately, I did have a way of doing this zoom in, but now, for some reason, all I can do is zoom out, which is a bit annoying. Or change the field of view out, which is, yes, very, very annoying. Oh, I did the wrong thing. I did that. There we go. Always remember to get rid of the HUD and the controls so that it works fairly well. I think if I take an angle something like that, just as a potential screenshot for this video, it isn't anything. This isn't anything great, but it is a potential screenshot for the video. So there we go. Okay, that is the Ferrari. Let's go swap over to the Lamborghini, which I have in blue. And welcome to the Lamborghini Countach LP5000 QV. What a better sound, a better startup sound. What a strange vehicle in a sense. It is very luxurious. It is a terrible, and I do mean terrible, I stalled it. I'm telling you, these cars, they're not, their clutch physics are really bad. What it is that there is very little in the way of, I think there is very little in the way of torque. I've mentioned this before, torque from the engine. So it does not really do much with the engine. And therefore, if you are not giving it any throttle or too little throttle, it just stalls, because it assumes that there is none of that general engine rotation that's giving it enough just to keep it moving and ticking over. That cone needs to be moved. This is really annoying me. On the bump. Right, let's go, and immediately I can feel that this vehicle is far more boaty, which is what I would expect. I expect the Miura to be like this to be like this, the Countach to an extent, although there was a bit more. The Murcielago and the Aventador all have that tendency, but these older ones, the Miura and the Countach, Murcielago, the Miura and the Countach both have that incredibly boaty nature, and everything just feels a bit more, as you can feel, sluggish, a bit more. You need to push, you need to see, even the turning, there's just understeer everywhere, and that is how this vehicle was, and therefore I am quite, even more, I'm quite happy to have it in such a manner. It is just that it is a very, very, well, understeery boat of a vehicle. Nowhere near as nimble, which is good, because that means that the two classic vehicles that they have released have completely different characteristics. And that shows they have really thought about it and are not just making something in a general way and saying, well, we will fix it later. This has been thought about. This vehicle feels bigger. What I am going to say, another thing that I have noticed about this vehicle, being naturally aspirated, I have noticed that the gear shifts are faster. So the revs drop a little bit faster. It is not a great amount, but it is noticeable that they drop off a lot faster. Now, further to my testing of Assetto Corsa EVO version 0.6, these are not the only two vehicles I have tried along with the 296. I've tried the Honda NSX, as I mentioned previously. That is my go-to vehicle to test, because I think that it describes or is able to communicate the changes very easily. I drove the Mini for the first time. That was an interesting vehicle to drive. Definitely a very interesting vehicle to drive was that Mini, and the weird, I suppose, K-swapped Mini with the Civic engine in it, coupled with, or complete with VTEC. That I'm going to make a video on those two fairly soon as well, not at the Nordschleife. I'll probably throw them around somewhere like Brands Hatch. I think that would be a good spot for them. A very, very interesting combination, those two, and comparing the speed difference between them. Interesting vehicles to drive. There goes more of that boaty understeer. So I have tested those two. The Audi RS3 I have tested. I've also tried out the Caterhams that I have driven before in a race. Tried those out, or one of them out. that was fairly decent. I am still a little bit hesitant with that Caterham. It still has a tendency, in my opinion, to not communicate when it is going to step out. But it seems a little bit better. I was able to understand more of what it was doing. This steering feels far heavier than the... This feels far heavier than the 288. Significantly more than... Significant amount more, that is what I was trying to say. Significant amount more than the 288. That is abnormally heavy. So I've tried those vehicles out. The F40 LM, which drives very differently to what I now remember, and the F2004, which I am a little bit disappointed in because it seems to not quite be, still does not quite seem to be there. There's something about it that is still not right. But there we go. In my opinion, anyway. Still a good car, but just not right. The understeer, I think, is very, very obvious with this vehicle. The V12 sounds lovely. It really does. And the physics, the characteristics of this are well represented. Very well represented. Bit of a lock up there. So I spec'd this car out because I could. The 288 GTO had very limited options. This had a few more options, so I decided to spec it out with, well, everything beige inside and a metallic blue. I think a deep metallic blue for the exterior. And the reason I did that is because a long time ago, and this was a model I never managed to make because I never really had time. Well, you have to go so slowly through this. That sounded like it's scraped. And I do know how scraping sounds. I've done this in my car. The reason I picked this combination is because I had a... That used to be, I've just realised, that used to be a strip of grass, a green slippery tarmac, a green slippery surface, and a strip of grass you could go out and clatter. Interesting. But what I used to do is, or what I had was a model, one of those build-it-yourself models, and then that came with paint, and you needed a spray, airbrush, an airbrush setup, and all of those. And I never really had that. And I got given this model. It was something that I was given, and it was on the cover, or on the box. There was a dark blue Lamborghini Countach for the model with a beige interior. So that is why I've picked this one, and I have spec'd it out to be the same. And I do think it does work. It really does. It does work quite nicely, in my opinion. Modelling for both of these is very good, but again, like the Ferrari, it looks like the odometer is not working properly, and that is a definite disappointment, that there is no working odometer. So hopefully they fix that. Just these little bits. This car is... I am going to crash this car. I am almost certain of it. This car is so understeery. I'm almost certain of it that I'm going to be crashing this car today. Let's get it down to third. I do like the engine response though. It is immediate. Of course, you would expect that with a naturally aspirated engine. Although that being said, it's being an older engine, there is, I say immediate, there is a little bit of a delay that you would not expect in, for example, the NSX, which is just that little bit sharper. But it is still very, very good. The NSX and this car are actually not that far apart in age, just a few years. But it does have a difference, and of course the NSX is Japanese. This is Italian. This is V12. I think the NSX is V6, and this is very, very fast. As I have pointed out before, I still think the brakes are far too. I think the brakes are still far too sensitive. Sorry, not sensitive. Far too powerful. It's far too easy to get the car to slow down. I'm used to brakes that are maybe not quite as sensitive. Lights on. And now we go for a push lap. I say push lap. I think I'm going to crash this. I do think I'm going to crash this. Still, okay, the revs still hang a touch. So I do need to be wary of that. I think I did an 8 minutes 9 on the trial or the test with the GTO. Let's see how much closer I get to that with this vehicle, which seems more sluggish, definitely more sluggish through the corners, but the pickup on the straight is a lot better, but it also is a lot heavier. So that is something that I need to think about, and what I'm trying to do here, despite the fact that I'm not pushing with all my strength, is I'm trying to get the car to tip the car in a little. So get it braking, a little bit of trail braking, and see if I can get that to help me. Currently, it is not helping in the slightest. And it might be just because I have to get used to actually doing that sort of braking. The gearing is different. It is definitely different. A much longer gears, it seems. Definitely feels like that this is much longer in the way of gearing. But it also does pick up. I think it pulls a little bit better from lower down as well, which would make sense. It's being naturally aspirated, so it has a better. It does pull a little better lower down. But it does not feel anywhere near as, I wouldn't say composed. I certainly am not going to say composed, and the reason I do not use the word composed is because I do not think the GTO was composed. It was just sprightly, nimble. This does not feel anywhere near as nimble. And I also think that there might be instances where first gear might need to be used. But definitely a little bit faster to shift. The brakes, while good, are, if we were to compare them to the GTO, the brakes on this are a little bit more akin to a sponge. They feel more spongy. A little bit of reverb with some echo. That was interesting. And certainly the turn in through miss hits miss leaves a lot to be desired. Even if I am bad at it after all these years. Yes, this is a car in which first gear needs to be used. Because I think the gears are just that tall. Slightly scrambling around for grip under the brakes. Leave it in second as we go through here. So in the GTO we were in third and then downshift into second. This just held second the entire way. Not flat through this. Well, I could be, but I'm not sure if that is the way to do it. What I will say is that, unlike the GTO, where the rear end wants to rotate on you, this one appears to be more... well, the front end just does not wish to turn in. So you turn the wheel, and then this vehicle is... The GTO is more like, oh, you want the back to turn in? Sure. This vehicle is more like, you want the front to turn in? How about no? So understeer is definitely something this vehicle has in spades, really. Not that that detracts all too much from the experience. It is still very good. A unique experience so far in the Assetto Corsa EVO. There is no other vehicle like this. And I did manage to go a little bit faster through the carousel. So some positivity. Yes, this section has changed. They have changed the way the road, or not the road, the runoff and the edge of the runoff is. In that case, there is no runoff anymore. It is straight into crash barrier. With a little bit of tarmac as opposed to the green, the green slippery strip. The death strip, as it were. Definitely using lower gears through a lot of this, so it does show the gearing differences. And going between these vehicles, which I should point out that I think the GTO came out in 84, and this vehicle was released in 1988. So there is not that much of a difference in these vehicles. And then the NSX was 1991, 1992, I believe. So in terms of difference in the age of these vehicles, this is just a few years, but they do feel very, very different. Different philosophies, different styles. And unfortunately, due to the understeer, or apparently the first bit of oversteer, I've managed to get there, but it is also, whilst it has different philosophies and styles, it is also somewhat slower because of how much slower I have to go through the corners with it. That is just a lot slower than I did with the GTO, even though I do believe that this is faster in a straight line. So we had an 8 minutes 9 with the GTO, 288 GTO, And with this one, it is an 8 minutes 28. That was a good shift though. 8 minutes 28, nearly 20 seconds slower. Let's try out the brake, shall we? That's a lockup. But we managed to slow the car down. Now, if only there were particle effects, you would be able to see that lockup. That would have looked very, very interesting in my opinion. And let's go ahead and stop here as we did with the GTO and take a look at the replay. Save it immediately. And that, by the way, is how I've decided to paint the car. Let's have a look at it when we have the full lap. There, here come the lamps, pop-up headlamps. 1980s. I do think those look better than the Ferrari ones, but then this does have a much better shape, I think. Also, I could change the colour of the logo, the emblem, the writing, all of that could actually be changed as well, from silver, black and this beigey bronze colour. So I just put it back to that beigey bronze colour. It sort of matches the interior colour, which I think you will agree does suit the vehicle. Not all of my vehicles are blue, by the way. I know that a lot of my vehicles are either blue or red. I do also have green vehicles, and I think I have a yellow one too. I just look for whatever colour seems to suit the vehicles the best. Now, saying that, I think my NSX needs a respray because the blue that is may not suit it the best, but I have put it on an S2000, which I also drove for the first time. That drives very, very nicely, but I've painted that in the same blue, and that blue looks much better on the S2000 than it does on the NSX. So I might change the NSX to maybe yellow, possibly orange. I think green would not suit it. Red would, but I'm trying to avoid the red so that the red fascia around the tail lamps is a little bit more highlighted and pronounced. This car sounds brilliant. Very, very well done. Startup on this is also very good. But that sound is really nice. Really, really nice. That is just such an obvious V12. Oh, this is the version that had those extra inlets, whatever you want to call them, the scoops. I think there was a version that did not have all of this extra bit. All of these extra bits, it was a little bit more flat. I do prefer this one. It is it looks very space age. The wedge shape, and then on top of the wedge shape they've just stuck a whole bunch of stuff on there. The triangular shaped, or the delta spoiler rear wing, rear wing, the scoops for the intakes, the louvers at the back. All of it just looks very, very nice. And then, of course, the inspiration for the Lamborghini Aventador. There's a vent and a door, as you can clearly see. So they've clearly named it. The successor, the late successor to this, would be I say the late successor as if the successor passed away. No, the successor is clearly inspired by the vent and the door on this, and named Aventador. I am well aware that is not how they name their vehicles, but still. I think this might be the better option for, in all honesty, for a thumbnail. It just looks somewhat better. The Ferrari is a better car to drive. I think I can easily say that the Ferrari is the better car to drive. But this looks better. I do remember also having a poster of a Lamborghini Countach. I do not recall having that many posters of Ferraris, despite the fact that I knew the Ferraris better. I do remember having a Lamborghini Countach poster, although that was white. I say poster, it was actually something that my mother had cut out from, was it from a magazine or something? And I'm not sure if it was from Top Gear magazine or something, but cut it out and then framed it. So I had these four different vehicles in this frame, and that was really, really nice, and that used to be on my wall a long time ago. Let me go ahead and get it. Well, before we do that, let's have a listen from the front. Good sound. Let's have a listen from the back. An even nicer sound. Look at that shape. Futuristic wedge shape. Terrible to look out of, but in all honesty, that was really difficult to look out of, and, well, there's no looking behind you. It's all I'm going to be able to see is that delta wing. Let's go back here and see if I can find a decent screenshot. I want to be in the sunlight though. Oh, actually, as we are going through the sunlight, that would be interesting. If I can find a moment of that. There we are. That could be interesting. But where are we? Here we are. And it sort of ruins the bright... No. It ruins the bright blue. Find a better spot for it. I mean, all of these spots could be pretty good. And for some reason, I'm not sure why, but I think it looks better with the headlamps up. That angle looks quite nice. If I can get a good angle here with the panel. Oh, also I made the wheels white because, well, why not? This car does not really have a bad angle, does it? It looks good from that angle. It looks good from the side angle. It looks good from the front. A very, very well designed vehicle. Just a shame that I do not have the field of view options that I want to be able to really get a good screenshot of this. But I think that can be the screenshot for the video. And to end, well, I could also try and do... See, that actually gives me sort of what I want. It's just not quite in the right location. In all honesty, that gives me what I want. And I can get that. That I can get. And probably even better with that angle. So potentially I could take that as a screenshot too, because that looks pretty good. And also I'm going to go over to the front and see if I can look around the vehicle and get a screenshot from there. I think it needs to be at a higher up angle, something like that, possibly. That also looks pretty good. But for now, as I said, let's go ahead and continue playing this, and we will... I'll try and find a... Let's do that. for now, that is that, and I shall be ending this video. In the next video, I am going to be... I might take a look at the other two GT3 cars that we have, so the Porsche and the Mustang GT3 cars. That might be a good idea to have a look at in the next video, could be rather interesting. And then that only leaves... What does that only leave? I'm now thinking. The GT4 car, that only leaves the Audi GT4 car, which I might leave until a later date, because I do want to take a look at the... take a look at the Mini, and with its weird Civic engine as well, and also take the S2000 out for a drive and see how that pans out. But I shall have to see when I get time to do all of that. For now, this car sounds fantastic. That is probably one of the most realistic sounds I've ever heard in Assetto Corsa, full stop. Not just Evo, but the original Assetto Corsa as well. There's something about that one that sounds just right for some reason. And I'm not sure exactly what it is that they have done. So, with that, I shall end this video. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to click on the like button if you like this video. Subscribe to the channel for more videos on Assetto Corsa EVO and Assetto Corsa Rally. Leave a comment in the comments box below. Let me know what you think. Do you like this car? Do you find this car really understeering? What do you think of version 0.6? Is it the step in the right direction that I mentioned in the last video and in this video? Or do you think that there is still a lot that they need to do? If you wish to do so, you can check out my Discord server, you can check out my Patreon, and you can check out my social media. Of all of them, I am actually somewhat active on the Discord server, so if you ever want to discuss the cars and talk about these sorts of things, you can find me there, although I do try and respond to comments as well. That is all from me, and I shall see you next time in Assetto Corsa EVO, where either I'm going to be looking at two more GT3 cars, or an S2000, or I might be throwing a Mini around Brands Hatch. Two Minis, which might actually be interesting. So for all of that, make sure you stay tuned, and I will see you next time.